of George Quackenbush, family members of a man buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale in 2014 reached a settlement with the cemetery in a lawsuit that alleged family members were asked to make adjustments in the decedent's casket while the lid was open after the casket proved too wide to fit into the grave. We have here in the studio Todd Maxfield-Matsumoto, our Grave Matters consultant, and Kentucky McGee, president of Van Casket Maintenance Company. Welcome.
Thank you.
Todd, what exactly happened in the case of Augustine Martin's funeral?
Well, Forest Lawn basically had this family, the Martin family, and when they went to go do the graveside, they had about 175 mourners, I understand, and they discovered that the casket was too big for the grave that was dug. It wasn't an oversized casket. The grave was just dug too narrow, just a hair too narrow. So, what the funeral director decided to do was to remove the handles from the casket. They didn't want to do that in front of everyone, so they had the family assist in taking the casket to a nearby van, loading it in the van, which is tight quarters. It's the California heat, middle of the day. They had to open the casket, and the family had to assist in shifting their father's body so that you could access the hardware to remove the handles. The son recalled in court dripping sweat over his father's body in the sweltering heat. Probably not the best way to handle this, because they didn't want to reschedule. They didn't want to wait to redig the grave. It just was a poor decision.
I see. Is there anything the cemetery could have done to prevent this from occurring in the first place?
Well, I mean, what cemetery crew doesn't understand the basic dimensions of a grave to dig? But accidents happen, and that's why the funeral director or a family service coordinator, somebody should have double-checked the grave site, just like the rest of the details of the funeral, before the family arrived.
Good point. Kentucky, given the high price of caskets these days, do you think that removing the hardware should have been a consideration?
No, because where did they even put the handles? And throw them inside the casket?
Okay. How egregious was this situation actually?
Well, it's not like they were taking advantage of the family. It was a difficult situation. The funeral director had to think on his feet. He just didn't make the best decision. It's not like he violated his funeral service oath.
Oath? More like funeral service oath.
Good point, Kentucky. If you were to encounter this situation, what would you do differently?
Well, first of all, I would double check everything, as I mentioned before. But if this happened, let's say I inherited the service, or the accidents occurred, I wouldn't have involved the van, and I wouldn't have involved the family. Instead, I would have invited the family and the mourners down to our reception room at the funeral home, free of charge, maybe offered some light refreshments. And if the family still seemed upset, perhaps offer a refund on the graveside service, and if need be, the casket. It's not worth having a lawsuit, and it's not worth robbing the family of the dignity that they deserve because of a simple error.
One last question. Is there anything Forest Lawn can do to regain the trust of the community after this?
No.
Well, I differ on that. I think that, first of all, admitting their mistake, which they did publicly, they said their cemetery made a mistake, is a positive first step. They didn't blame the family. They didn't say that they didn't do anything wrong. The second thing is, apologizing profusely, not only to the family and the mourners, but to the public in general for failing to give any service the dignity that it deserves. And then they have to acknowledge, and publicly, that they will put a retraining program in place for their cemetery crew, starting with their foreman, and possibly even their funeral crew.
I see. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.